Welcome to another episode of the Transform Podcast. We are super excited to have a fantastic guest here today in Suzy. I'll let her tell you more about herself. Suzy, thank you for having me in your home.
Thank you.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
For the folks that don't know you, who's Suzy? Tell me about you.
Such a deep question to start off. Who is Suzy? I think it's in discovery right now.
Okay, good.
I thought I knew who I was, and I think I know who I am, but there's more to me than I realized.
Awesome. Tell me about that.
Ooh. Okay.
I told you.
Oh, yeah, you did. So I've been on this journey that has been this kind of ladder effect.
Okay.
Where it starts from the everyday life that everybody else is living, kind of in the hustle and the grind, not really fulfilled as a person, but knowing only what I had been taught.
Okay.
And then I get cancer. And so, level 1, right?
Yeah.
Or 1.5. And what I learned through that, and there was just this kind of understanding that there's more to life than I know. I just didn't understand what that was. Just tapped my mic.
No, it's okay.
And, but understanding that. And so it was this recovery where there's so much internal going on for me, there's so much discovery going on for me, and yet the rest of the world goes on as normal.
Right.
And all you want to do is jump back into that, get back into the normal. No one is really vibing with you where you're at because they've got their normal lives, and so I did that. I jumped back in. I got back in as normal. And I actually thought life was on this incredible trajectory. And I was like, oh my gosh, I finally get it. I went to this event with my company. I am interacting with people. I am helping to host. It's this like big hotel in Vegas, and it's just, I was in joy, and I'm like, awesome. This is it. This is what I've been missing. This is my direction. And then like life hit me with a car. And it's like, no, it isn't. Good luck. Nice try. And so it was brain injury, and that shifted who I was as a person. Next step on the ladder.
The next level.
Yeah. And so recovery through that and all the things I've learned through that. And I was thinking the same thing again, like I'm following my purpose. I understand what it is now. I'm getting past fear. I just had this incredible understanding that anytime there was fear, it wasn't something to run from, it was something to run towards, to figure out what's there. To understand that that's not real. And just moving in that direction was an incredible drive of
to be resilient, right? You kept at it.
Well, and it's this understanding that anything can happen. I went running every morning pretty much. And then one day I get hit by a car. It's not like, and it was the same with cancer. Before cancer, I was doing like a boot camp 3 days a week. I was working out. I'm incredibly healthy. I had food sensitivities growing up. And so it's just this recognition that anything can happen at any time.
Right.
And
it doesn't matter the lifestyle you carry or
no.
Just stuff that hits your life.
Right. So who are you going to be? Because anything can happen at any time. And it kind of shifts how you live life. All of a sudden it's easy to get beyond fear because, you know.
What's there to fear more than this?
Yeah. Death can be a beautiful motivator.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way.
Of course, yeah, I understand that.
But like we are all going to, what are we living in fear of? It's just a cycle of life. And so I'm moving that way, and I've got my purpose, and I start speaking, doing front of room speaking, understanding that the life that I was living doesn't fulfill me.
Okay.
And so I start moving directly toward it, unapologetically. Sometimes having to apologize, because when you move unapologetically, people don't always, anyway.
Right.
Yeah, it can be direct. And so I am at this incredible high. I just keep following what it is that I know. And again, I think I am on the best trajectory. Life is effing good. Life is opening up. Everything I want is coming to me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I would ask you about where you're heading later,
Yeah.
but I want to take you back further.
Do it.
Who's Suzy growing up? You know, this resiliency, and I commend you on the strength that you've had. I've been touched by a disease like this amongst my family. I will tell you about it later on.
Please.
And you know, tragedies, because there's two things that, the way I see it, two things that are in store for you in life. the path to, the ultimate conclusion of life, and also stuff that happens, right?
Yeah. Right.
The S that happens, right?
Yeah.
Let's just keep it at
Yes.
that. And it happens to a lot of us. I believe everybody in one way or form. For everybody might be different, but stuff happens to all of us. But I commend you on the fact that you did not let that define you, and you kept, living life, finding fulfillment. That says a lot about you. So tell me where that comes from, that resiliency.
It's interesting. As I go back, part of what I appreciated about brain injury, because it did shift who I was raised with a pretty big fear mindset.
Wow.
That was what I appreciated about it. It was like it knocked it out.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
I mean that growing up, although I grew up in nature,
Okay.
we were on 5 acres in the middle of the country, like with an orchard,
Wow.
creek running through it, and crawdads. So I was a tom girl, if you will. I still liked like music and girly things, but like I would be climbing trees and holding ducks and digging in dirt, and I love that still.
Here in the U.S.?
Yeah, California.
Wow, that's amazing.
And had some incredible gifts, like with who my family is, with who my dad is, with who my mom is, right? But the mentality is very fear, in a way.
The fear of losing the stuff we have, or
That's
fear
a
in
great
another
question.
way. The reason why I say that is because coming from a household where, when we were having the other podcast episode, I always saw it that I had all the basic necessities of life, right? If somebody would look from the outside to my household, they would see a child in a third world country that had the best shoes in the classroom, the best backpack, that maybe got to ride in a car. But I also felt like I was abandoned by my family in a way, in the sense that my parents gave me everything I wanted, but I felt that they always requested more from me, in the sense that no accomplishment I had was enough.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
For him, it was like they allowed him to run wild and do whatever he wanted, but he felt alone because nothing was asked of him, right? If that makes sense.
Totally.
But the perspective of fear comes, the point of relation here, the conversation we're having, is that my dad was always in chronic state of fear, because he felt like all these nice things he had, he could lose in an instant because of the government situation, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Any possibility. And so that fear mindset was always present. The fear of not making enough money, or maybe losing all the money we have, the fear of going to jail, the fear of, call it whatever you want. So that was always present in my family as well. So I wonder, what do you mean by that growing up with fear?
I don't believe it was that, because I grew up in the town was pretty affluent.
Okay.
We were not, but we always had enough. So there wasn't any lack in that regard.
Okay.
Maybe a fear of being seen, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Because it would be, there was a lack mentality to it. There was, I don't know that my parents pushed me or didn't push me. I enjoyed school. I enjoyed learning. I kind of pushed myself in that regard. We lived in the country, and so I actually think like I kept myself separate from the family in a way, maybe because that was more comfortable. That's where I found love.
Okay.
Just out and about. Because they had their own dynamic happening. So I could go run playing a tree, or I could just go lay on the back of the horse, or I could, go dig in the dirt.
Sounds beautiful, though.
It was. That's just it. I mean, come on. I'm grateful for those things. And as they're going through their journeys, I was gifted to be able to learn some of that. So my dad would garden.
Okay.
And it would be me and him gardening.
Awesome.
Or like at one point he was taking a keto and learning meditation and breathing techniques, and he would share those with me. But on the flip side, not very It would be a give love, take love kind of a thing.
Okay.
And the fear would come that, like, if you throw out an idea, it's going to get knocked down.
Okay, well, that makes sense now. Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't matter how or what it is. And in a way, you are too. Because on the flip side, there was the ability to never be right about anything. That would challenge their being. And so when you grow up feeling like all of your ideas get knocked down and you're never going to be right, you lose who you are.
Right, you lose that will.
Well, you go to everybody else, right? What everybody else thinks has value, what you think doesn't.
That groupthink type of stuff.
Yeah, well, not just groupthink, but like sit, be quiet. Don't share those things. Because why would you? If every time you share something, somebody's going to tell you it's a terrible idea and then you're completely wrong. So I like I said, I was really grateful. Brain injury was a gift for me to be able to see beyond that. And
well, that's powerful. What you just said there is powerful, because you are deciding to see something wonderful that allowed you to go on in your journey and maybe live your best life from something that most people will see as a terrible thing, right?
It taught me something that I hadn't been taught prior.
Which is what? Aside from obviously that
So much.
the opinions of others might not matter
Right.
as much, right?
Well, but it's interesting because it really is, like you're talking about groupthink, and yet it's different. Because it's the incredible power of community. But it is the empowering community. Right? When they say, like, surround yourself with people that are only going to lift you higher,
Yeah,
that's powerful.
it is.
So after brain injury, what I noticed was the community that I had created around me did not serve me. It served who I was, right? When I'm in a negative fear-based mindset, you surround yourself with people that validate that part of you.
Confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as I shifted where I was, and all of a sudden I'm wanting to read about philosophy, and I'm wanting to read about people in business that are doing more, how they created things, and yet the foundation I had created in my life did not support that.
Wow.
And so a lot of shifts happened, a lot of changes happened. But what was amazing was, because I know you said you're in banking,
Yeah.
the company I worked for was trading and investing education. And so it's a very different mindset than the mindset that I grew up in. And it was, not a perfect company. I don't know that any are, but they're sales focused. So all of a sudden, just by being immersed in this, there's like this abundance mentality.
Yes.
There is being able to look globally at financial markets, which can open up your mind in a lot of ways. You see the world globally versus just in a little immediate.
Your micro world of your person, right?
You get a little macro.
Yeah.
And because like who I was shifted, no longer was I comfortable being in this tiny office, this little cage that I'd built for myself. I didn't want to send emails. I would get up and I'd go talk to people. I wanted this. This was damaged, so I was all here. I was all heart, 100%. And it just shifted my way of being.
Wow, that's incredible. So what actions did you start taking when you decided to change? Obviously you had stuff that you had to do because of your physical status, but
Yeah,
what was intentional about it?
I love this question. Because I think that journey happens in a way where you learn what you need to learn to be able to go on to the next.
Yeah.
And so with cancer, what I had learned is I'd given my power away to everybody else. I was 36. I did not expect to get cancer. I hadn't known anybody
Wow.
that had had anything like this. And so, wow. When you grow up in a world where you don't feel like your voice matters, you're just waiting for everybody else to tell you who to be and how to be. And then all of a sudden something happens and you don't know how to be in that situation. You're like, I don't know what to do with this. So I turned to everybody else to tell me who to be and how to be.
And they didn't know either, right?
Oh no, everybody has. So you kidding me?
Their opinion?
Oh my gosh, everybody's got an opinion, especially when you have cancer. You should do this, you should take it easy, you should whatever. Here's this diet and I'm like, yes, give me I don't know what to do. And so I listened to everybody else, and that was a really difficult healing journey. What I learned is we have to be our own advocate. And so knowing that going into brain injury, knowing how to navigate the medical system now,
Yeah.
it was a very different recovery. It was like, however many days in the ICU, and I had to go back in just because this hurt too much. But it was, initially coming out, like my first week home from the ICU, I think I was awake for like an hour a day.
Wow.
And then it was like a gradual increase of time I could be awake. But the people around me are like, take it easy. Just rest. And I was like, I want to curse right now. But it was like, F that. Like, that wasn't what I felt. That's not what my body felt. I wanted to get out. I wanted to take on the world. I wanted to show that, like, this is not going to define me. And so, like, I was married at the time. And my ex-husband was at work. And he's like, just rest. And I would just get up and I would go and I'd walk around the block. And I was shaky and I couldn't walk in a straight line. And it scared me because I got hit by a car.
Yeah, so that relieving the trauma in your head in a way, right?
Yes. And you're looking at everybody kind of around you being like, okay, hold on. Watching cars just as they drive down the street. Just that fear that's there.
Right.
And so it was really good. But there was this drive to just do it. This drive to just walk around. And he'd be like, you walked around the block today? And I was like, yeah, I did. And I was awake for like 3 hours a day. And I'm like, I'm going into work. It was actually kind of funny because the day before I go in and I'm pulling up my email. I was managing a team of co-managing, me and this other gentleman, a team of like 150 professional traders globally.
Wow.
And so like it had gone from working like 24/7, where I was on call, to now like I've got an hour a day or 3 hours a day. And so I check my email and I'm going through it and I'm like, oh, I couldn't read it.
Wow.
I pull it up, like individual words make sense.
But you couldn't cohesively make sense of all the writing.
Sentence. No. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going back to work tomorrow. And then I would get pushback on this. And I'm like, I will take an Uber because I wasn't able to drive at the time. And so I listened to myself. That was the biggest lesson I'd learned from cancer, was to be my own advocate, to follow what feels good to me. And that was every step along the way. And it was, like I said, like kind of relentlessly. And so I would be at work and like I brought a cot so that I could rest. It was down in the supply closet. And I just kept making steps for what it was that I needed, because what I understood through my healing is I could feel intensely what would help me. And I was Googling for answers, and I even went to go see a doctor and they couldn't give me any. Like, it's brain injury. Everybody's different.
Yeah. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. And then they found out it was only a few months in, and they kind of like laughed a little inside. Like they smiled and like, oh, you're only a few months in. Wait a year. And I was like, are you kidding me? I don't want to wait a year. And when I read the things, like, I'm like, this is not going to be true for me. And so I just started following all of the things that would make me feel better. I would notice meditation made me feel better.
Okay.
I would notice like trading and investing education. There was a psychologist on staff, or psychiatrist. And he's like, here, try this. And it was frequency music. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
No, but elaborate on it.
Well, I wasn't at the time either, but it literally sounded to me like a thunderstorm, like a rainstorm.
Okay.
But in the back end, there's a certain frequency playing. And so I noticed I would play it in the morning when I would get up, and I think it was about an hour, my mood would lift. And so that was without question I did this. I had a friend whose friend did like essential oils, and at first I was like, well, that's not really going to work for me because my smell was pretty much
gone.
Yeah, limited, incredibly limited. And she's like, well, it's not always just smell, but let me talk to her. And so she gives me this map. She's like, here, like, I think it was frankincense that I would use and some acupressure points. And I was like, I will try it. I will try anything. And that actually helped me too. So I would do that. And it was just this like religious dedication to all the things that would make me feel better. Because even though I might be awake, I only had a certain amount of like cognitive time each day.
Why were you fighting so hard to get better?
I don't know. It was, I think, just the awareness of how limited our lives are that we lead.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the near-death thing, and I know you have a story, so I can't wait to hear this. But it's, I remember going to visit my dad at one point, and he had just bought this beautiful new home on acreage in Northern California, rolling hills, like surrounded by like grapevines. He's got this orchard, beautiful home, great views. And we go to see it, and he can't see it. He's stressed. All he sees is all the things he has to do.
Oh yeah.
He's just bringing nothing, and I'm like, I don't understand this. I said, do you see what you have? Like, where is this energy coming from? You just bought this beautiful home, and then he's worried about money. And it's like, there's so many ways to monetize money. You love gardening, like create a blog, do some affiliate links, like, but he wasn't able to receive that. But I could see, I was like, we have the ability to impact each other every single day. We have all this time through every single day. Like, what is holding us back from this? But it's the fear in our minds.
The fear on the frame. Yeah, like you look at life through the lenses that you want to look at it. And like your dad in this scenario, unfortunately, he had all this wonderful, majestic place, and the only thing he could concentrate was the problem. So it's what you decide to put your mind on. Yeah, I believe.
I think you're right.
Yeah. I'll tell you about my story. Tell me. Finish.
No, I was just going to say that leads to the following, like this past year of my life where like I was at this high, but it's now next level, but I'm at the beginning of this level. And it's unpacking a lot of fear.
That's good. That's good. I'll tell you about my fear.
Please.
I'll tell you my story. This happened as a child, right? I'm 7 years old. I'm with my cousin. My mom leaves me at my grandmother's house. Grandma, it's great-grandma at this point. It's taking care of us because my grandma's not at the house. And my great-grandma might be 82 years old at this point. I'm 7 years old. My cousin is 9. And then we're doing what kids do, which is playing around, finding something interesting to do, again, countryside, that type of stuff. So, and this is like rural Cuba in 1998. So we are, we find a couple eggs, and we find this little alcohol stove, and what do we decide on doing? Meringue, right? You know when you beat like egg whites and sugar, it becomes meringue. So we start doing this thing, and my great-grandmother notices, and she's like, all right, let me take this away from you guys. You guys are gonna get burned. Let me hide this little oven, right, away. We get it again, and we go outside. We were doing this inside of the house, and we go outside of the house, and we continue doing the same thing. It was like a little thing with 4 legs, a hole in the middle, and you would put like a piece of wool and pour alcohol and light it on fire, and we would roast the meringue on it. In the sunlight, you can't see the flame of alcohol. It becomes translucent. 7 and 9 years old, we don't know any better, and we're like, all right, this went out. What's the next reasonable thing to do? Let's pour more alcohol in it. And the tank just exploded. Both of my legs, fried chicken. So I got burned at 7 years old. I spent, 4 or 5 months in the hospital dying. Thank God and nature, whatever you want to call it. I survived, right? After a lot of medical treatment. So I learned about the wonders of life and being alive, and the value of being here, right? In this existence at an early age. And I think that I carried that throughout my entire life. I've been unapologetic, like you say, most of my life. I'm the big mouth type of guy. I like to stamp my case. I like to be heard. I like to go for the things that I like and I enjoy, and I don't care who disagrees. That's just the way I lead life. And I don't know, clearly maybe that has something to do with it, but that was my first experience with death and dying and the fear of that stuff. And then, recently, one of the reasons why I couldn't be here with you for the podcast a couple of weeks ago was because I had my second encounter with death. Not me personally, but fortunately my mother was sick, cancer as well, so I could relate. You know, I had no words to say before because I can't really say that I know what it feels like, but I know the struggle. My mom was sick for about 6 years and a half, and her fight, you know, was over on July 3rd of this year. And, you know, it is what it is. She's with God now and in a much better place than here, not suffering anymore. But, yeah, it taught me, again, it reinforced what I already believed, that life is very limited, that anything can happen, and that it's important. It's as a matter of fact, it's critical to live what you consider your best life and not care so much about what people say and how the economy is doing and how the job is doing and, you know, what my aunt says or whatever. You know, who cares?
Right.
You know, you should care about you and your immediate family. You know, giving love to them as much as you can, and just, you know, trying to do your own thing. So that's my piece. Maybe it's not as deep, but it's how I feel without going into tears and stuff. So thank you for sharing that story, impactful. So I appreciate that. Now that you know a little bit more about me, maybe give me a little bit about the professional aspect. You mentioned that you were into trading education and leading 150 people. Who's Suzy professionally? What do you want to accomplish? What have you done? What are you doing now? What are your passions?
Thank you for that. Oh my gosh. That's an incredible way to segue from what you just shared into this. And I'll leave all my questions for you.
If you have questions, we could intersect right now. That's fine, by all means.
But I think because you say you didn't go as deep, but I feel like you succinctly summed up everything in your story. Yeah. Because you're right, it's all about love. And why do we give our power away to everything else, to people, to society, to try to define who we feel like we have to be? Like, what does this matter? It
doesn't, and it's easy to fall into that mindset. Very easy, because then we get taught, like you were taught, that your opinion is not important, and that, you know, I'm the adult in the room, and what you say cannot challenge my own beliefs, and I can't change because I'm too stuck in the mud, set in my own ways, and so what you're saying is discounted and incorrect. Yeah. So we go on in life, and then we see other figures of authority, like your boss, like your partner, like the doctor, and all these folks, and you're like, all right, if these people are telling me that this is the way, then this is the way. And although in the back of your mind, you're like, that does not sound like it's the way, you discount yourself. Because that's the pattern you have followed, unfortunately, right? Through your entire life. And I could relate to that. It's happened to me. Even though I've been unapologetic for my entire life,
right?
There's been figures of authority in my life that I have respected, or maybe in my point of view, it's respect, but in reality, it might have been something similar. It might have been that, no, their opinion, it's more relevant than my opinion.
Right. Which is so silly when you think about it, because what would make it more important? We're all just coming from our own experience.
Right.
Right? And so we are all just owning our own truth for wherever it is in that moment.
Huh?
And so your truth is yours, theirs is theirs. They may not agree with you, you may not agree with them.
Yeah. What is real? What is real? Right. And this is one of the things. Actually, I love this point. Okay. Let's articulate on this point.
Let's do this.
Because and this is maybe, it leads to the misconception question.
Okay.
I have folks around me, in my family, I have been of this belief as well at some points in my life, that things are how they are. In the sense that, I cannot pull a relevant example now, maybe you could help me with that, but certain situations in life, whether that has been professionally or relationally, that I have said like this, oh, let's do this thing like this because this is how it is. But then that might be how it is for me. And then the other person tells me, oh yeah, but maybe that's how you see it, but that's not how I see it. How do you reach in a world that's everybody, it's entitled to having their own opinions and their own frame of seeing the world? How do we find agreement?
I'll ask you a question.
Tell me.
Foundationally, as humans, what do we all connect on?
Oof. Foundationally,
Yeah.
what do we connect on?
Doesn't matter what country you're in, doesn't matter what gender you are. What do we all want? What do we all need?
Finding happiness, fulfillment, I don't know, having good relationships,
Yeah. Where does that come from?
your spiritual self, like the person you want to be, right? Your ideals of the world.
Yeah.
Is that it? Illuminate me. No, I like this topic. I really
Yeah.
enjoy this.
I was gonna say, but it's like, where does that come from?
Your soul, your
Yeah.
I don't know, your person, who you are in here, your thoughts. Deeper than that?
I think yes, soul, heart. When you look at like what we all want to be loved.
For sure. Yeah, I agree with that statement.
And so when you look at us foundationally, although how we navigate it, what we're navigating, what religion we are, what country we live in, at a foundation, what we all want, what we all need is the same.
Love, right?
Love. This is how you connect with anyone.
I agree. But you could love somebody. I love my wife dearly.
Yeah.
And I love my children dearly.
Yes.
And sometimes they see the world in a different way than I do. And
Absolutely.
that sparks a little bit of, all right, how do I find consensus in this situation? For example, let's say this is not a real scenario, but let's say my wife wanted to take my children to swimming classes.
Yeah.
Hypothetical scenario, right?
Absolutely.
Because obviously she doesn't want them to drown. I don't want them to drown. But I think that putting them through that experience might be as traumatic as going through the once in a lifetime scenario in which they might be drowning. And I'll be like, all right, if I have to push them 25 times a day into a pool so that they experience that feeling of drowning, I think that's worse than maybe in 10 years they go in a situation where they might drown or might not. So
Right.
why are we going to do that? That will be a perspective type of issue that we
Right.
might have a disagreement on.
I hear
How do
this.
you fight that? Or
if
maybe
you don't?
not a fight.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the wrong use of word. How do you find agreement in something that you might disagree upon?
Can you take off your lenses in that argument, in that disagreement, and recognize that maybe how you see the situation, there's no right or wrong,
Right.
but that there might be another way to see it. And can you allow that? And then maybe go, okay, we try it. And that either like you go in and you talk to your kids and they go to swimming classes, maybe they come home and they're like, Dad, that's the best thing ever.
Okay.
Or maybe they go out and they're like, Dad, you're so right, that water, And you go, okay. And you listen to them and what their lenses tell you.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Then now that you explained that to me, then a little bit I became similar to your folks growing up. I was too stuck in the mud. Like, I don't want them to go through swimming classes. I had the lenses on.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that explanation.
But we do. And so it's I will not call that easy.
Yeah.
Because we've got our lenses and you're like, no, why would you do this? But sometimes it's like, I think we need to allow each other, like you were saying, like me growing up, I was told no, but what if they just allowed me to find out for myself?
Right.
Through experience. And what if they realized through doing that all they were looking through was their lenses? Maybe it would have been the best thing ever to let me explore this idea or to go into this, because either I learn, right?
Yeah.
Actually, we're always learning either way.
Of course, either way.
But then I learn to learn.
That's profound.
Hmm.
That's profound. And I think that reflecting on that, sometimes I might be acting like that with my children at some point.
Yeah.
Because it's like the shortcut, like the paradox of, oh, I know the shortcut to life. I know the shortcut to what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
Because I've been there, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I already put my finger in the outlet.
Right.
If you do it, you're
Right.
gonna get shocked. So we go so unconsciously, I guess, now that I think about it, you go in life saying to them, hey, you know, don't do this, don't do that.
Right.
Maybe this will lead to the wrong outcome. Maybe this will make it easier for you. But that's been my experience.
Right.
What if it works out different? So that's powerful.
Yeah. And think about it. How do you learn?
Yeah, by touching the outlet.
Me too. Me too.
That's
Because
cool.
that's something you don't forget. You can read everything you want in a book, but when you actually go out there and live life,
Yeah.
it's a different lesson.
100%. So beautiful.
Yeah.
Take me back. Take me back to Suzy professionally. Let's use that as a segue for discussing you, what you have done, what your goals are, what you're currently doing.
Professionally, I'm led through my heart.
Okay.
So you're right. Prior, I was on this track of what I thought. I mean, maybe I didn't even know, because I was really never happy. I was really never fulfilled in what I was doing. I was never seen in what I was doing. But that's all a reflection of me, because I didn't have that confidence to stand up. You're absolutely right. I would get into like meetings, especially with any kind of male authority figure, and I wouldn't use my voice. I would shut it down, and I would smile and nod, and then I would go back, and whatever it was like all of a sudden clarity would come to me, and I was like, I didn't agree with that. Why did I agree to that?
Yeah.
And then afterwards, it was like a different person coming at them. It was unexpected for them, and some of them embraced it, and some of them didn't. So professionally, I became somebody that just followed what my heart told me. And a lot of people wouldn't necessarily understand that. And I was okay with this.
Let me ask you there.
Yeah.
The shift.
Yeah.
Was it what happened to you health-wise, the accident, or was it something different that caused that shift?
I think it was a combination of factors. Like I had mentioned, I'd set up a foundation of people around me that validated the fear me. So a combination of being in an environment, first of all, in my 40s, in a work environment that is abundance mindset, that is actually, like the company I was working for gave hugs.
Wow.
There was a woman that gave the most amazing hugs, Wendy. Like you would give her a hug and it would be like 5 minutes, and it was just gorgeous.
You're listening, Wendy, right?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
She remembers.
Wendy Pine, yeah. And it was just those things. I mean, again, no one is perfect. Everybody's going through their journey, but we all bring something that somebody's going to remember. And so I would go in, and like I said, initially it was just for a few hours a day. I had a neighbor that would drive me. And honestly, there was very little that I got done because people just wanted to sit in, talk to me, see how I was doing, share their stories. And that changes a person, knowing you're loved in that way. Right? Knowing that people want to hear your story, hearing other people's story. There's support in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sweating too.
So tell me more.
Yeah.
Give me more.
More.
That
Okay.
company.
So that helps. That helps develop. It's a different mindset than what I had created around myself. And that was a beautiful thing. It was me, again, with the understanding I'd had from cancer. I already had kind of, I won't call it a tragedy, but one kind of traumatic event happen.
Yeah. Very
and
traumatic.
I learned from that. And so I could come at this one with what I had learned. And so that helped. Again, it was kind of this release of fear, this understanding that frick, life can happen, and the conversations I would be able to have with people and be able to take that in with this. I mean, we talk about meditation and how that's powerful because it quiets the mind. That was unintentional. And I was stuck because with brain injury, for me, like, our minds are conditioned to kind of limit what it is that we take in.
Yeah.
Because if we look around us, like right now, there's that piece of plastic
so much
floating.
stimulus.
So much. And my gate was completely wide open. I could take it all in. So I had to pretty much hide in a dark room.
Oof.
I couldn't go get like a drink with a friend to distract myself, or watch TV or listen to music, or like all distractions off the table. Me, my mind, dark room, 4 months, pretty much.
Wow.
Minus the time that I could go in, go to work. Life gets really real when you can't distract yourself. And so I worked through so much. And with the guidance of an incredibly supportive community in that arena. And some really great conversations with other people that had been through similar challenges or were going through similar challenges.
How did you find that community? The community that you created for yourself again. So you said that you have people around you before that were not uplifting you and
Right.
pushing you to,
That's what they knew.
you know, upwards and onwards.
Yeah.
But the second time it was an intentional thing that you must have done. So how do you get these folks to come on board?
It was just an incredible awareness of not letting anybody else in. And I'll mention, like, as this was happening, it's an interesting realization now. Negativity could not come into my world. I could feel how it impacted me significantly. And I had to have a conversation with my husband at the time and just said, we can't have those conversations. I need you to frame this differently. I can't take this in.
Okay.
And he didn't know how to do that.
Yeah,
which
it's
just
hard.
created distance.
Yeah.
Because he would come and he would try, but I was like,
Not working.
no. And my mom, so much fear. Her daughter's hit by a car. They just want me to stay at home. They want me to do nothing. And I would, I think a couple times kind of entertain. And we went to a movie, and coming back, I could just feel the energy, this fear. And I said, no. And I'd asked her as well. And I said, I need positive energy right now. And she couldn't. And so I just blocked that. We didn't speak. I was unapologetic and relentless with who I let into my circle. That was pretty much it. That's how I built it. Because when you cut out all the people that don't serve you, what you're left with are the people that do.
Yeah, it's that sense of empowerment, right? Like you could do it all. It's like that gym partner, right?
Yeah.
If they're like, oh, you know, it's 6 a.m. I don't want to get up. You go. I'll go tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or the other guy that's like, all right, I just did 100 push-ups. You better beat my record now,
Yeah.
right?
Right. And I was fueled by that. Like, and people would, like I said, they're trying to get you to take these small steps. And I was like, screw that. I'm just going to go all in. This was actually through need, but like I decided I'm going to shift and be a speaker. Owner of the company doesn't see this for me. But one of the other people that was higher up and truly respected did, and he had a conversation with them. And at the time I was actually managing the schedule of the speakers that would go out, and there was an event I had to tell one of the owners. I was like, we don't have anybody to cover this. And he's like, well, what if you did it? I was like, okay. It's a week and a half away. It's a 3-hour presentation on trading and investing.
Wow.
I wasn't actively trading at the time. I was still working my full-time job. I was bringing on a new onboard, and I was training the person that was going to be replacing me. So I literally would squeeze in like a couple of hours every night and just learn this thing. And I went out there like a week and a half in, and it wasn't perfect, but I did it anyway. And I remember sitting it was remote, so I was sitting in this hotel lobby. Well, people are starting to come into this event, and the process is that like people come in, and then I come in as the speaker, as the expert at the front of the room, right? I'm sitting in this hotel lobby, and I'm watching the doors open and close, and I'm like, yeah.
The biggest fear of my life.
I was like,
is
I could totally go out those doors right now. And I chose not to, and I chose to come in anyway, and I chose to tell my story, and this imperfect 3-hour presentation that I'm pretty sure ended up being about an hour and a half. And yet it's so authentic.
Yeah.
That people just wanted to hear more.
Yeah. So freeing too for you, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, well, and the support of the people that were like kind in this room that were helping me. Like there's a couple of like sales personnel, and they were just super supportive. Like they're so supportive. Like, no, that was actually really great. And I'm going, like I know in my heart, like, yes, I got out there and I did this, but there's more. And I kept pushing for that. Like people would be like, no, that was good. I was like, I get it, but it's not connecting. What do I need to do? What do I need to do? And so you drive towards those people. Like, where can I learn from? Who can I learn from? What are they doing? How can I make that mine? And Yeah, that unrelentless, like, you're going out and seeking the people, not letting the people seek you.
Right. I'm interested on knowing, when did that happen? When did you decide, and why did you decide to go from managing in the firm
Yeah.
to speaking? Like, significant difference there. What triggered that?
It was a shift, but it was also, it was awareness that what I was doing, partly because of brain injury, because what I was doing prior was like multitasking central. I'd be on the phone, I'd be sending an email, I'd be talking to someone in my doorway, like all simultaneously.
Yeah, no focus.
Zero focus.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, with what I was healing from, it was very challenging for me to do these things.
Right.
I wasn't connected to any of it. I wanted to connect with people in person. And so just sitting in an office, and I loved it before, just emailing people, not having to interact with people, it didn't fit me anymore. And so I wanted something where I would engage. I actually wanted to leave the company. But one of the instructors there that I had connected with, he'd reached out to me because he had said I had a stepchild that actually had a brain injury. So I understand what you're going through.
Wow.
And so we would have these conversations, and I was like, where I'm at now isn't fitting me. And I don't know where I want to go, but I was getting like some really clear messages to follow. But he's like, understand with this position, being a presenter, the hours are maybe 3 to 4 days a week, and your presentations are like 3 hours each. And you can make this kind of a salary, and the rest of the week is up to you to do whatever you want. Do that. And I was like, and I get to connect with people, and I get to share my story, and I get to like help others with what I've learned.
Yeah, following what you loved. The same thing you said at the beginning.
Yeah. And so then it kind of, although scary, that connected. And I was like, okay, this makes sense. Let's do this. And it was just that drive to learn, not understanding why at the time.
You mentioned that you have very clear signs. And I think that this happens to all of us.
Yeah.
That we might get very clear signs.
Yeah.
But we have not been conditioned to recognize those signs. Sometimes it's what limits most people to, from taking the leap into doing the stuff that they love.
Yeah.
How do you recognize those signs?
I don't know that I'm the right person to ask this of, because I get so many clear signs that I don't understand right now. It's not even funny. But at the time, there was a stripping away of everything. And so literally, I would have dreams.
Wow.
And it would be so clear, and if I would follow whatever that was that was given to me, it would be easy. And this is going to be a couple of really silly examples, but initially these are the ones that stick out. Like every year with this company, we had this like annual international conference. But at the end of this conference, which was my favorite part, the conference itself was amazing, connecting energetically with all these people. But on the last day, after this like big banquet gala, there would be dancing.
Huh.
I live for this. And so for this was like the one time a year I would get to dress up. You go out, you connect with people, and you get to dance. And so with that, there's the fun of like finding the dress and all those things.
Right.
So I am sleeping, sort of how I slept at the time. And I get this idea for this dress, and I'm like, that's gorgeous. I Google the description, and up pops the exact dress that I had just seen. And I'm like, well, there it is. And it wasn't inexpensive. I think it was around $500. And I just went, okay, well, then I'll make that happen. And I'd also had this clear thought of this house on the California coast, on acreage, with this, like, it's literally behind PCH, cliffs, and I could see the trees and the grove in the back and the people that I would hang out with. And so I wake up and I Google, like, acreage, Northern California coast, or at least just in a certain area. And there it is. It's like 20 acres, and it's only a few $100,000.
Wow.
On the coastline. And it was all, I was just like, but that I didn't know how to afford.
Right. Yeah.
And I think, yeah.
That happens sometimes too.
It does, but at the same time, that's just because I didn't know how to. I reach out to my aunt and uncle, and I'm like, holy moly, it's like $300,000 for like 20 acres. That needs to be developed. Had I just given the guy a call, like had a conversation, right? hindsight.
Yeah.
But things like that. And so it was just this clear knowing, it was this clear energetic. I would say now, because of my recent journey, because of this next ladder up, I'm less clear on these things. There was so much at one time that it scared me.
Huh. Why?
Because
Elaborate on that. What do you mean by that?
I meant it literally felt like the world was reading my thoughts.
So many signs of the direction you should take and the stuff that you should do.
Just what would come to me would be, this is going to get deep. And this is just one of many, but it's the one that stands out, is, like I said, things are getting to this top. Like there's a lot coming at me in a lot of different ways. And in some ways it's beautiful and magnificent. And in other ways I'm managing things that are challenging me.
Right.
And I'd had a conversation with my mom. And I'd mentioned to her that I had this brief, really quick thought of suicide. And then I'd managed it and I realized that was silly and it was just a thought and it passed through. And that was it. That was the whole conversation. And I'd met somebody on LinkedIn. And it was our first call connecting, and she'd reached out to me, and I loved her messaging and everything that she was about. And so we're chatting, but within the first 10 minutes, she's like, share about you. So I think I shared a little bit about me, and I asked her about her. And the story she shares is about her mom, who committed suicide when she was 46. And I was 46. And it was things like this, and how that impacted her, and how that, and it was so much of that. It's one thing when it's one thing every now and then, and you just go, wow, that was really weird, that was kind of synchronistic. It was consistent. And it made me afraid of who I was, because I didn't want people being able to, there's a sense inside of us where we like our privacy.
Yeah.
And it felt like all of that was completely open. And I didn't know what to do with this. And so I shut down who I was on a couple of different levels.